Welcome to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast, the show for people who are ready to break out of survival mode in order to build a truly thriving life. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell, my co-host and the founder and CEO of Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, we break down common roadblocks that keep people stuck surviving and share ideas to help you thrive each and every day. This week, I'm joined by Marlene Eick. Marlene is an Ohio farm girl, creative agency owner, and a fellow speaker and coach. She's the host of the Live Your Story podcast, which will also be airing this episode, and a member of my personal mastermind group. Marlene is smart, funny, and passionate about helping people live their story, and I am so glad that she could join me here. Today, Marlene and I are talking about public speaking. Why people are so afraid of it, how to create a great speech no matter how long or short it is, and tips for taking the stage with confidence. If you listened to episode 49, where Mark and I shared ideas for creating more engaging workshops, I think you'll find this to be a really great expansion on a similar topic. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Marlene. All right, Marlene. So you and I talking about public speaking today. And I think the first thing that people think about when they come up with the topic or are thinking about prepping for public speaking is just how freaking scary it is, right? Like, I think we've all heard that anecdote that people are actually more scared of public speaking than they are of death, which, it's funny, I think, to us, because we, through our FFA experience and other leadership opportunities, you and I have been doing public speaking for a long time, whether in, really prepared settings or, more extemporaneous, off the cuff type things. So I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on why you think people are so scared to speak in public?
Yeah. So like you said, sometimes it's funny to think about those things now because we do those things so often, they're not nearly as scary. Okay. But I was thinking back to, because I didn't want to just answer for other people, what other people might feel now in their professional lives. I was thinking when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, and maybe being asked to do my first kinds of public speaking things, like what were the things that I was scared of? Granted, I was a kid, so it might be a little different, but I think the same concepts are pretty applicable across the board, no matter what age you are. And I remember just being so scared that I would not remember what I wanted to say. Like that I would have planned something, or maybe I had a line in a play, or I, had to memorize the FFA creed and say that in front of someone, or whatever the thing might be. Like I knew I had planned very well what I was supposed to say. I had a line in the Christmas program, like a Bible verse, like, or whatever it was, right? Like, here's what you're supposed to say. And then you're going to freeze and you're somehow going to not remember what you're supposed to say. And then from that, the real fear is that you're going to feel dumb. Yeah. And you're going to look stupid, and your friends are going to make fun of you, or going to feel weird, right? Or you're going to feel like everyone is staring at me, right? And I don't know what to say. So I think a lot of the fear comes from that, because even as adults, we have this fear of, oh my gosh, what if I don't remember what I'm going to say? But I do think that the maybe first fear as adults, it might be different from when you're a kid, is that as an adult, you're planning what you're going to say often. Like when you're a kid, the stuff is usually given to you, right? Like you have a line in a play, or you memorize this thing, or whatever it was. But as an adult, you're often the one who is given some kind of opportunity to speak in front of people. And so first you have to decide what you're going to say. And so I think that's a place of fear too, for a lot of people, is what should I say? Should I try to be funny? Should I try to be really serious? Should I try to be inspirational? And what should I say? And then the following thing of that, continually underlying fear of, but what if I forget it then? And what if I get up there and everyone's looking at me?
Mm-hmm. Well, and on that same note, like part of it is the fear of forgetting. I know for me personally, part of the fear in, to your point, like looking dumb,
Yeah.
is around like saying the wrong thing. So that
Yeah.
was always something. I have a history of like defaulting to prepared public speaking, or when I have, maybe in more of the professional setting, like writing things out, or having like a really serious script, or
Mm-hmm.
practicing a ton,
Mm-hmm.
because the idea of like off the cuff extemporaneous speaking
Mm-hmm.
where I don't have all that preparation, I am always really afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing.
Oh, yeah.
One of my more recent public speaking experiences was in the Farm Bureau discussion meet. And that was one where like you can't prepare for everything that someone's going to say.
It's
And so
basically an
it was
entire contest
terrifying.
of extemporaneous.
It is. And so like I think there's two sides to that coin. One is forgetting what you're going to say when you're prepared. The other
Yeah.
is like in situations where you can't always prepare for everything, how do you kind of trust yourself to not say
Mhm.
the wrong thing or to say a dumb thing or whatever.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I'm almost digging up some of those fears myself, just talking about this, right? Of imagining that. And I think I'm in a place now where I still almost always get a little nervous before any time I speak in front of a group. But I get nervous for a lot of important things in just little ways. Like I play the piano a lot at different church events or other events. And even though I may be playing a piece that I've played hundreds of times and feel really comfortable with, I often still get just a little nervous before I start. So I think that's totally normal for anything like that. I usually just take it as a sign of, oh, this is something that's important to me. I care about it.
Mhm.
I want to do well. And so I don't think the goal should ever be that you will feel no kind of nerves or fear or anything before you speak, because that's just unrealistic. Like I
Yeah.
think it's just a matter of feeling much more comfortable with it. I mean, is that true for you? Do you just feel more comfortable now? You probably still have some fears, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think to some extent I'm much more comfortable than when I was, early in high school and just kind of
Yeah.
getting started in formal speaking. Um, but there's always that bit of nerves. Or I think too, for me as well, the bit of nerves around like, will I connect with the audience? Like it's one thing to stand up in front of a group and say words. It's another to feel as though you're actually like
Yeah.
making a connection, making an impact, that they
Right.
care, that they like what you're saying. Right. So there's some of that too, that the fear of like, how am I being perceived? And granted,
Yes.
we all have some of those insecurities or whatnot. But I don't know that
But
will ever go away
you
totally.
don't want to be perceived as just a robot who is,
Right.
spouting these words. So we've been talking about the term public speaking, though. That encompasses a lot of things. We're not just talking about getting on a stage and giving a speech at a workshop or a conference. How do you define public speaking? What do those different things look like?
Yeah. I mean, I think my definition of it today is much broader than when I
Yeah.
was younger and in, 4-H, FFA, some of these leadership organizations. Because in those leadership programs, right, there's a very formal definition of what public speaking is. Like
Right.
it's a
Right.
literal contest to write a speech, stand up there and give it, or
Yeah.
in extemp, to prepare something. And so I think today my definition is much more flexible. For anybody who listens to our podcast, we did an episode a few weeks back on tips for workshop facilitation and making workshops more engaging. And I think that's definitely a form of public speaking. Again, a little more casual. Like we don't have workshops that are just scripted from start
Right.
to finish, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
kind of adjust on the fly based on the people in the room. So that's a version. I mentioned the discussion meet, which is more of a conversation type contest. And so, or anybody who's done debate, like that's sort of a version of public speaking. But even in the professional world, like anytime where you have to give a presentation, or maybe you're at a meeting and you're doing an introduction for
Yes.
somebody, like a
Yep.
speaker or a topic or something, or a panel, like my involvement in Farm Bureau, a lot of times we're facilitating panels where we have to ask the panel questions and get clarification on things. So there's a lot of different ways
Mhm.
that public speaking shows up. Like, are there other things besides that you think of that fall into that umbrella?
Well, I suppose the other thing I was thinking of too is, let's say, you work for some company or organization that has sponsored something. And also oftentimes somebody from your company might be asked to give remarks at that sponsored event or workshop or whatever that might be. And so that's often a time where it's like, okay, like unless the communications department has written something for me to read, which again, is that going to be effective or not? Maybe it is if you prepare well. I mean, there's a lot of good things that could come from a scenario like that. But oftentimes, no one else has prepared content for you. It's just a matter of, you're going to show up at this thing. You're expected to talk for just a little bit and bring some kind of remarks on behalf of your organization. And it's like, what am I going to say that's going to be relevant? And or it might be showing up on behalf of your company to thank people for coming to something, or perhaps getting behind the microphone at an event where you're going to give out an award, and your job is to kind of introduce somebody but also thank them. I think there's a lot of just very small opportunities like that we may not think of as public speaking when we envision it, but that really is public speaking, right? Like, you're going to stand up in front of a room of people. That might be 12 people, it might be 500 people or more. And even if it's only 60 seconds, that's like a small chance for you to say something meaningful in the time that you have. And so I think there's a lot of small opportunities like that probably a lot of professionals get pretty frequently. If you work in sales or anything that's customer facing, you probably have a lot of those small opportunities pretty often.
Definitely. For sure. So that being said, a lot of
Mhm.
times people don't write things for you, right?
Right. No.
You're kind of on the fly with.
Yeah, you know that I'm a fan of The West Wing. Most people don't have a Sam keyboard writing things down
Don't
for
we
you.
wish we all, though?
Rob Lowe, could you come occupy the office next to me? That'd be great.
Well, that's what I have a friend who was a speechwriter for Tom Vilsack when he was
Oh, yeah,
the
cool.
Secretary of Ag. And I'm always just like, to my friend, like, can you just come work for me? Can you just,
Yes.
write wise words and
Yes.
wisdoms for
Please
me? I'd
learn.
appreciate that so much.
Please, like, learn all my personal stories and my own anecdotes and all the things I like, and then write things for me. Yeah.
Exactly. So for those of us who don't have one of those
You
people,
don't have a Sam Seaborn. What do you do?
exactly. Let's shift here into kind of the
Okay.
real tactical, tangible stuff. So,
Yeah.
As you and I were thinking about this, sort
Yeah.
of think of preparation for public speaking, whatever it is, whether it's, a long speech, you just some short informal remarks, whatever it is. I kind of think about it in two different parts. So one is like the actual content, right? So
Right.
the structure, how do you put it together? How do you write it? That sort of thing. And then the second bucket I think of is like the preparation side. Like, am I going to memorize this? Am I going to read this? Am I going to do some other sort of preparation? So those are kind of the two buckets that I think of.
And I
figure
totally agree.
Oh, go ahead.
I totally agree. Like, I think it's what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. It's the writing your content and then planning that delivery of it in some little way. And I mean, I think that might sound, if you're like, oh, but I'm not really a speaker and I'm only going to speak for 60 seconds, it might be like, it's not really this whole delivery that I need to practice, but you kind of do, or I should say, you're going to be much better off if you really put some thought into that. And I think that's what you're trying to say, right? It's like, no matter what the format is, if you think about your preparation in both those camps or both those buckets, that bucket of content development, what you're going to say, and then thinking about how you're going to deliver it, just how you're going to deliver the message, right? How are you going to say it? I think that goes a long way. What tips have you kind of come back to yourself over the years, and do you give people when it comes to like writing the content and figuring out what it is you're going to say?
Yeah. So I bet you and I have maybe a little different approach to this, which I think is totally cool.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to hear sort of how you structure things in particular. Depending on the format, like just my style, I do
Yeah.
like to start from somewhat of a written script just
Mhm.
because for me, writing helps me think through what I want to say more so maybe than even an outline. But that's just how my brain works. And I like
Yeah.
to see how things flow. But that being said, the more experience I've got, also the more comfortable I am kind of stepping away from the actual scripted words themselves. Like when I was younger, or even when I was in college and I was on presentation teams for the National Agri Marketing Association, like I would really get hung up on missing certain words or,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, that's not what was on the paper. And now I'm stuck and I don't remember where I go from here. But today, because I coach some FFA marketing teams where I really try and go,
Yeah.
the information, right? It's not about the exact wording and whether, because the only one who knows whether you get the exact wording right